This week, I talk about a phenomenon, how ghosts save historic buildings. And what better place to feature than Mansfield Reformatory, aka the Shawshank Prison. But before I get started on that, I tried something new on the Facebook page. Anybody who knows me knows I'm not huge into social media. In fact, if I didn't post on the Ghost Walks Facebook page or in related to ghost stories at all, chances are I probably wouldn't be on Facebook or on social media in general. It's just the type of person I am. So I decided I'm going to have some fun with it because I don't know if anybody's noticed if you're on the fan page that sometimes there's this huge amount of stuff that comes through every single night. I have these exciting posts that go up and they get great response. I hope everybody is enjoying it. But then other times, not so much. I don't know if it's getting in my head, but it's not natural for me to post things, to sharing my personal life. It's not natural to me. So when I come up with an idea, something I would like to try out, it might be fun for me, maybe not fun for others. But I thought, what better way? I'm a huge fan of any type of story. I would do a story game. So that's what I did. Trying it out for the very first time. So here's what I did. I posted a story, the beginning of a story. And afterwards, I asked people to say, what would you do? And how would you finish the story? And I got a few cool answers. It's in its infancy. Hopefully this idea takes off. So here's the story. You're hiking at night. You get lost. You're scared and alone and needing help, with complete silence and darkness surrounding you. Then in the distance you see a shadow stick still among the trees. What would you do? Finish the story. So I'm going to take the top ones here. Sorry if I missed your post. But Tanya C., she posted, I crouch down, low to the ground, with nervous laughter, threatening to escape my throat. Obviously, she is a writer. Moving slowly, I make my way closer to the shadowy figure, keeping watch for movement as I try not to make any noise. Hidden behind the rotted trunk of an old fallen tree, I'm so close I can hear breathing and smell sweat. The hair on the back of my neck stands as the cool, damp wind blows over me. Resolve strengthens my spine and calms my nerves as I stand and step out from my hiding place. I will not be toyed with. I will not be prey. The mouse is about to become the cat. It's a good twist at the end there, Tanya. As well, Karen B., she posted, keep watching to see if it moves. It's very straightforward. Provided it wanders off, sneak around, avoiding branches, keeping an eye and ear out for anything. Or, she had a few posts here, lay down on the ground and cover myself in leaves, but still be able to see it. So she's assuming it's mean. Or, and this is my favorite one, this is the one I chose, run towards it, arms failing, screaming, while making a crazy face. So that's the one I liked. And Ian R., who I know to be Ian Russell, I don't think he would care, I know to be a paranormal investigator, he said, pull out my EMF detectors and EVP recorders and go running after it. It's just assuming, Ian, that it is a ghost. Now, I posted my own as well. Just going to look it up here. Yes, everyone, I don't remember what I posted. Yeah, so this came from me. It's listed as Ghost Walks, but this came from me. The woods brighten as I approach the shadow. The pounding in my ears. Did it just move? Or just my mind playing tricks? Then it does move. Its arms shot up. A long finger draws my attention to the tree. I turn back to see the shadow is now gone. I'm alone with a strange desire to look in the tree. A brown sack stuffed deep. I pull it out and inside see a small compass, and below that a written note, which said, Save yourself so I can rest. If anybody knows the the inspiration, that's the word. The inspiration for that ending to the story there comes from The Hermitage, the story of Robert Howard and his interaction with the ghost of William Black. Now that one ended a little bit more violently, not like overly violently, but the same idea, right? The idea how an energy that's stuck, if it helps somebody out, or in the case of William Black, spoiler alert, if it doesn't help but tries to hurt, that it can then rest. So that's where I got that. But yeah, I'm going to do more of these. I absolutely enjoyed it. I loved reading people's answers. I wish there was more. That's my only complaint. But everything needs time to build. So I'll do more of these. It'll be on the Ghost Walks Facebook fan page. Post a scenario and have people kind of finish the story. But yeah, no, the ones I read, Tanya, Karen, and Ian, perfect. Thank you for responding to that. Getting right back to the topic at hand. History saved by ghosts. Now here we get into the idea of popularity. There's many of these historic locations that they're popular because of their history. Now this isn't just an idea in the world of the paranormal. And thankfully we don't live in the 1970s and 1980s when historic buildings, if anything, were just condemned. People saw them as eyesores, as my own home city of Hamilton has proven time and time again. Unfortunately, we've lost a lot of historic buildings over the years. But now we're in a time where history sells. So even developers today, my topic for this podcast predates today, but today developers are even seeing the value of having a historic place, not even if it's just the shell, so it looks historic, and then they gut it and make it all modern on the inside, kind of like what they did with my own local historic hotel called the Royal Connaught. So you have a story living in these buildings because these were the locations of where things happened. What things? That's depends on the building itself. Good things, again, depends on the building. Good things or bad things, it is a part of our history. And to be honest, I think most people wouldn't care. If anything, if you lived in the same building that murderous Evelyn Dick, the torso murderess, lived in here in my own city of Hamilton, then you would brag about that. You wouldn't assume that there would be any leftover energy, or at least that you would hope, if it's not a confined space, and you'd feel that before you moved in. But I'm getting off topic here. So getting back into that idea how ghosts can save history, well, it's people looking for an experience. Now, take for example, we can't really do this in Canada, unfortunately, so I got to go down into the States. You take, for example, some of these locations in the United States, and what I am talking about is abandoned prisons and asylums. Now, this is really, when you think about it, the only thing that could be done with it. Now, I am aware in Buffalo, they are looking to convert an old asylum, an insane asylum, into I think it was said to be a hotel at one point, a retirement home at one point. I'm not sure what the current plan is for that. I'll look that up later. But usually that's not the case, right? Because I think when people look at it from afar and they say, okay, this is going to be turning into a hotel, other than paranormal enthusiasts such as myself, Tanya, Karen, and Ian, you're not really going to seek it out. You're not going to like the idea of sleeping overnight in a former asylum / prison unless you're wanting an experience of a lifetime. And that's where the ghosts come in. So let's take, for example, not the one that I'm going to be featuring today, but let's take a different one, West Virginia Penitentiary. Now, this is personally one of my favorites. I'm doing air quotes right now. Because its history reads like a horror movie. And if you have that deep, dark history, then opens up the idea of dark tourism, then you lure in the people who would enjoy this kind of thing. So dark tourism and history being saved by ghosts do go hand in hand. Because what you have is this abandoned building with a deep, dark history, such as a prison or an asylum, where people died, some in violent ways. I won't get into too much detail there. You can read that stuff online on the Ghost Walk site. You have the dark tourism mixed with this abandoned building that has now been opened up for anybody to visit. So there's many factors playing into here. You got the dark tourism, you got the dark history, you got a building that normally would be off limits and you couldn't trespass on unless you wanted to get fined or get arrested, now is open to the public and done in a safe way that when you visit, you're not going to worry for your safety. So all these factors come into place, and it creates this wonderful little sect of tourism that saves these historic buildings for future generations. Now, I know personally, if I saw a picture of West Virginia Penitentiary or Mansfield Reformatory or Waverly Hills or wherever, Rolling Hills, and I was told, okay, unfortunately this place doesn't exist anymore, it was torn to the ground, the first thing I would think is, it was such a shame. And I would be upset that I didn't have the ability to visit this place. I'll give you a dark history example from my own home city. We had who was considered Canada's Al Capone in Hamilton, which is a mob city, mob town, during Prohibition. So he had a house on Bay Street South. His name is Rocco Perry. And supposedly this house was done up in such a way that it was almost like a middle finger up to the authorities. It's kind of cute in a way. Although a lot of the stories aren't cute, but anyway, you get the point. So he had like secret passageways and secret systems in the house. So there was like this hidden room where you could hide illegal booze and money. That there was like a weird way that you opened a trap door to get into it. And as well, is said that wine used to run through the pipes of the house, that there was certain specialized taps that if you turned it on, illegal wine would come out and you could have as much as you want. So then I think of this house and I'm like, wow, that would have been probably the best example for a Prohibition museum on the planet, because it really did affect North America more than anywhere else. And I know a lot of the stuff that Al Capone was connected to had been torn to the ground. Definitely not on the level of what Rocco Perry did to his house. So that if this house still existed, if you open it up as a museum, I can see people from all over Canada, all over the United States wanting to come and be in this place and hear about being a bootlegger during Prohibition. It is a huge miss in the world of tourism. But unfortunately, that house was torn to the ground many years ago. Once again, we go back to the 1970s and 1980s, and they stuck this ugly apartment building on the spot where it used to be. So they missed an opportunity. But down in the States, I think they appreciated their dark history a little bit more than we did here in Canada. So you visit these places like Mansfield in West Virginia, and what you're getting is not just a museum. It is a museum, but you're getting the history completely unpolished. Now, this is very rare in today's society, because I find a lot of these museums that are featuring historic places, the first thing they do when they come in is they fix it up. And a lot of them will do these modern setups and then go to great lengths to try and recreate the original history. And I can understand in the sense of things that have faded and worn over the years that you want to show off as it originally was. For example, if there's some type of artwork or wallpaper that you want to recreate so you can see how the people lived. But when it comes to certain aspects of the history, seeing it in its abandoned form gives it more story. I'll elaborate. Knowing that the place hasn't been touched connects you with the long dead characters of the people who once lived there. So if I go into a museum that's inside of an old house, I might be told a story that the daughter of the family played in this room, but I don't really get a feeling that I'm in the room that she was in. Yes, it's the space, but it's just, there's something missing with the energy of it. I don't feel that connection 100%. And I will put that on some of the tour guides that I've had throughout the years, that they're not be able to create the story in such a way to connect me personally with those people. But I'm not going to put all the blame on them. And I think it's because that these places have been so whitewashed. These places have been so updated and modernized and washed that you've lost that original history. You've lost that original energy from it. So the abandoned structure that is now open for the idea of ghost hunts and historical tours still has that original energy to it, because nothing has really been changed. Mansfield Reformatory. We're about to get to the ghost stories, so I thought, let's round about and get back to that. I've been there a couple times in my life, and taking the tour through the building and even being there overnight, you really feel the energy. Especially when you can be by yourself. I've gone to rooms, I've broken off from my team, and I went to rooms just so I could stand there and feel it and look around. And you really feel connected. You really feel like there's eyes watching you from all parts of the room. And I don't intend that to be as terrifying as it sounds. I'm talking about eyes of history. That I can go into the library at Mansfield and really feel what people saw when they walked in there, just because it is originally, put the decay aside, that is originally how the space was, right down for the most part to the paint on the wall, to the desk where people checked out their books. It has a feel. So Mansfield is a good description of this, especially when you look at the cells. The 6-story high cells, which is the tallest in the entire world. So that alone gives you a feeling when you walk in there, but then to know when you go up to certain cells and you're walking along that platform, you look into each one of those cells, a lot of them are open for you to go in and explore. You never know what type of hidden gem you're going to find. Now, a lot of it is being a prison, there's graffiti. You read some of the graffiti and you try and picture, this person in the 1950s, they wrote on the wall, "I'm so bored," whatever it might be. You could almost sit there and feel what it was like to be that person. And that has real value in it. Now, I've spent all this time telling you all the stuff that has value in it, and I haven't even really circled around to the ghost stories themselves. So I'm telling you that this type of abandoned structure experience is spectacular, but then they have to have a hook. Because you can't just say to someone, "Oh, we have this museum. We're not going to fix it up. We're not going to spend any. We'll make it safe, but we're not going to spend any money to wash it and make it look clean and presentable. We're just going to, have you come in and see it how it was, and with the decay and all." And a lot of people, especially schools and whatnot, would be like, "No, I don't think so. That doesn't work for me, man. Good luck with your venture." But so you need a hook. You need something to come in to people who aren't in the paranormal field, such as myself, and I'm sure a lot of people listening right now, to get the normies to come out and take part. So that's where the ghosts come in. In my opinion, having ghost stories kind of makes it normalized for regular folks in schools and whatnot to come in and experience. Mansfield Reformatory, great example of this. Now, I couldn't possibly leave this podcast without giving you a couple of the ghostly experiences, so I went through a bunch. Now, if you want more information on Mansfield Reformatory and even West Virginia Penn, go to ghostwalks.com and just do a search for those. There are articles that I have compiled and posted on some dark history and additional ghost stories. But I took the two best ones, the ones I personally enjoyed the most. Now, the first one sees a scene. You're walking through one of the cell blocks. You're standing on the first level. This is the point of view of a guest who's in a tour group. So they would provide tours before the overnight investigations. One of the guests is standing at the back listening to the guide on the other side telling stories of history and ghosts from that particular cell block. You just feel the darkness in front of you, the darkness behind you, just the lights of the people standing around you that's illuminating your space. The guide's telling a ghost story when you hear a noise. From the distance and beyond the darkness, it sounds like somebody is running. Now the guide stops talking at this point, looking annoyed, not scared. Everybody else is confused. The guide is annoyed. As he hears the running, he yells out, "Running is not allowed." And looking back at the group to see if any of the guests, like who could have possibly wandered off from the group. I'm sure it's happened many times before. People just want to start their investigation. Paranormal investigators themselves can be very, very excited about this and not want to hear history or ghosts and just get right into it. So it was probably very normal for them to have it happen. But then the guy is looking very confused and looking out into the group, even though many of the people in the group were confused. The person who was witnessing this knew right away because they had watched the group around them and nobody left it. And they realize now the realization has come to them that everybody is present and accounted for. And as the guide is looking with confusion, everybody jumps because a door in the distance slams shut. The guide stays quiet for a few more moments and shakes her head and has to go on with the tour. The tour must go on. And even though she was telling the stories, you could tell she was physically scared by what she experienced. Now, one of the creepiest areas of the jail that I have personally spent a lot of time in is solitary confinement. Now, one of the guides had only worked there for about a year. And I don't know, maybe it's an initiation. I'm sure many of the guides who have more experience in the building probably push this position away when they're told you have to cover solitary confinement for the evening. And thankfully for their cases that usually 2 guides are assigned to solitary confinement. I'm sure there's more experienced ones who want to act tough or maybe like they're investigators and they would say, "Oh, no, I'll handle it by myself." For the most part, there's 2 people. So this young lady who was a guide, she was assigned to solitary confinement, which is also nicknamed the Hole. Now, it was her and another guide standing in this space by themselves. It was a small group within the building that night, and nobody had come to solitary confinement yet. They're standing there, and this young lady knew the history. She knew that she was in a space where inmates who had done bad things would be locked up for long periods of time with very little food, and sometimes locked up together, as such happened after a major riot. And during that time, you would have, in cells made for one person, you'd have 4 or 5 people. And these are violent criminals in some cases. Now, they made a mistake after this riot, and they put 2 criminals that hated each other in the same cell. So you can almost imagine what happened. And yes, one of them was murdered, and his body was shoved under the bunk until the guards finally let them out a month later to find what had happened. So this new guide, she knew all the stories. She's standing in this space, and thankfully there's another guide across the hallway from her. And as she's walking along, she can see the other guide, and they make eye contact, smile and wave. Now, they're prepping the area, setting it up, and they hear some shuffling in the distance. Sounds like somebody is finally coming into solitary confinement. So they're still standing across the hallway from each other, just kind of smiling. And the one guide, she nods to the other. It's just a nod. But for some reason, the other guy did understand. I don't know, maybe they were friends before or something, that the nod was to mean, let's play a prank. Let's scare these people good. So they walk away with a good experience, hopefully not a heart attack. But that was it. It was just a single nod that the guy did, and said the other guy completely understand what my nod meant. I don't know about that, but it's good for the story. So let's scare them good. And the shuffling gets closer. It's a dark hallway. You can't really see anything. And they're hiding in the adjacent rooms, so they can't really see anything beyond those doors. And as the shuffling gets just close enough, the two guides jump out at the same time and scream down the hallway. Now, they're expecting to see the shocked face of guests, which I'm sure has happened before, and they've gotten a nice kick out of it. But what do they see? An empty hallway. There's nobody there. The guides were still alone. These subtle stories, These subtle stories that have people and a history and experiences behind it. These are the ones that make for the true paranormal. Sorry, I just got a little off topic there. Anyway, that's it for the podcast this week, everyone. Thanks for listening. As always, I appreciate you. Next week, I am going to feature something a little different. It is going to have a ghost story, but the talk at the beginning is going to be about why I don't believe in aliens. This one's going to get a little bit strange, so I hope you come back for it. But again, thanks for listening, everyone. I'll talk to you next week.